Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about writing the results section for a manuscript. I am Dr. Rizwan. I am working as a scientist in the ICMR National Institute of Epidemiology, and today we will be working on writing the results section for a manuscript. The learning objectives for this session are as follows. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to understand the general principles in writing the results section of a manuscript and keep in mind certain do's and don'ts while writing the results section. So let us proceed one by one. There are some general principles that you should always remember when writing the results section for a manuscript. And then there are certain do's and don'ts that you have to remember while writing the results section. Let me talk to you about the general principles of writing the results section. You might have come across this figure several times through this series of lectures. So this represents the life cycle of research, and currently we are in this position, that is collecting data and analyzing data, where we are going to write the results section. You must also remember the Bradford-Hills questions on writing the different parts of a manuscript, and we are trying to answer the question, what did you find in the research process? So that is what we write in the results section. So far you have done so many things while writing the manuscript. That is, you have written the introduction where you talk about why you did this research, and in the method section you talk about what did you do in this research, and now we are at this stage where we are going to write what we found in the research. So that is what the results section is about. Before you start writing your results section, there are certain prerequisites. So the assumption is that you have analyzed the data and the tables and figures are available. In general, it's a good idea to have roughly around 5 tables and figures, because most of the journals have a limit on the number of tables and figures that you can submit. It will be a good idea if you have around 5 tables and figures to present in your results section. Please go through these tables and figures and identify the key interpretations or the key findings that are particularly and directly relevant to your objectives. So it will also be useful to you if you can prepare a skeleton of the different subheadings under which you are going to describe the results, and 1 or 2 key messages under each subheading. So these are the prerequisites before you start beginning the writing process. There are certain reporting guidelines available when you start to write your results section. So for example, there is the CONSORT guideline for RCTs, that is randomized controlled trials. There is a START criteria for diagnostic accuracy studies. There are the STROBE guidelines for observational studies, the Quorum or PRISMA for systematic reviews, the MOOS criteria for systematic reviews again, and there are several other guidelines which help you to frame your manuscript. So if you are following one such checklist, make sure that you read the results part of that checklist and stick to that format or template, so that it makes your life easy when you are trying to write the results section. And finally, when you are going to submit this article to a journal, it will be much easier for the journal editors or for the journal reviewers to see that you have stuck to a particular reporting format, and it will also help you in publishing your article in an easier way. For randomized controlled trials, as I said, there is a CONSORT guideline. The CONSORT guideline states that you have to have all these elements in your results section. So you have to talk about the flow of participants. You might have come across a flow chart where you begin with a certain number of patients at the top and you go step by step, and at the bottom you have the final number of participants who are going to be analyzed or who finally ended up being in your study. That is called flow of participants. If you have done any protocol deviations, you have to write them up. You have to give the dates of recruitment and follow-up. You have to give the baseline demographics. So what was your study population like? What was the age and gender distribution? Things like that. And then you have to talk about the number of participants. So this is the N, or the sample size finally achieved in the study, summary of the results. And then you report any other additional analysis or predefined exploratory analysis which you might have done apart from your main objectives, which you mention in the summary of results. And then finally you mention about the adverse events. So these are some of the mandatory points which you have to mention in the results section while sticking to the CONSORT guideline for randomized controlled trials. Then there is something called as the APA style. So the American Psychological Association has also put out certain guidelines for writing the results section of a manuscript. Here you can see it is somewhat similar to Consort, but it also adds certain elements. So you have to talk about the participant flow and the recruitment period, missing data, if there is any missing data, you should explain why certain data are missing, how much data is missing, etc. Any adverse events as a result of your treatment. Then you move on to the descriptive statistics, which talks about the study population and gives a context of what the study population looked like. Then you move on to the inferential statistics, where you talk about confidence intervals, modeling, etc. And then you finally give the results of subgroup or explanatory analysis, which you have predefined, or otherwise you did not predefine, but you thought it was important or necessary to do while carrying out the analysis. These are some of the general pointers that you need to stick on to while writing the results section. There are three main components to the results section. There is tables and figures, as we all know and as we all have discussed in the previous lectures. So the tables are the building blocks of the results section. That is why they are called the proteins. The figures are the drama. That is where action happens. So you get a lot of information from the figures, and it is also easy to consume. It also looks attractive. And then there is the text part, where you describe the results in sentences and paragraphs. So that is what we mean by text. So there are three components to the results section: the text, the tables, and the figures. For most of you, preparing tables and figures may not be a big challenge when writing the results section, because it is pretty clear in your mind what you want to present as tables and figures. But the difficult part, or sometimes the challenging part, is to write the text of the results. You might be wondering what to write, what to focus on. There are so many things that we have found out in our tables and figures. Should we mention all of them point by point, or should we only highlight the important points? So I will give you a general framework of what to write in the text part of the results section in the next few slides. So the major question while writing the results section is, which of the results should I extract from the table or figure and put it in the text? So that is a major existential question for many of us. We will try to answer it in the next few slides. Think of your results section as the display of a bakery shop. So imagine you go into a bakery shop and you see all these different beautiful and tasty things, right? So there are cakes, there are pastries, there are breads, there are ice creams, there are water bottles, then there are fruits, etc., etc. So there are different items which are displayed in the bakery shop. The display shows many good things, and think of this display as the table in your results section. And what you have to write is summarize what is there in the display without describing each and everything. So the text should summarize what is there on the display. If you see the slide, the description says what is available where, without putting in too much detail into the text. So you can say we had mineral water bottle in the top shelf at the back. You can say tea boxes are available on the shelves. You can say apples are available at the back, and you can say cakes are available in the top front shelf, and cakes are also available on the bottom front shelf. So this is an example of what you would write in a text of the results section, where you are referring to the tables and figures repeatedly, telling the reader that this information is available in this particular table, or this information is available in this particular figure, and what the main summary or the main message of that particular table is, you are going to write in the text. So in other words, you describe the main points from the tables and the figures and the main exceptions to these. So the glaring points, or the most important points which you can find in the tables and figures, are mentioned in the text, and referring the reader to the table for details. When you write your results section, you have to choose a sequential logic. So go from simple to complex. Start describing your study population, introduce your data, talk about basic things, frequencies, numbers, means, etc. And then move on to complex things like cross tabulations, statistical tests, p-values, regression models, etc. So start from the simple and move on to the complex. Start from the general to the specific. So talk about broader aspects and then move on to the specific findings of your study, and start from the beginning to the end. So it should also be chronologically ordered, that you found something in the beginning and then at the end you found something, so that they are ordered in that chronological order. When writing the results section, it is useful to have a skeleton of the different subheadings that you are going to describe your results in. So as I said in my previous slides, these are some of the possible subheadings that you can choose to use in your manuscript. So first we describe the study population, then we provide certain descriptive statistics or descriptive epidemiology, then we move on to the analytical epidemiology or inferential statistics where we talk about p-values and confidence intervals, and finally if there are any additional analysis which were not part of the main objective, you can prepare in the additional analysis. So this is a rough framework for what subsections you could have in your particular study. Here I am going to discuss a study which we conducted on interpersonal violence among adolescents in South India. This study had three main objectives, that is, among the adolescents in the selected schools or colleges, we wanted to study their knowledge about intimate partner violence, their attitude towards intimate partner violence, and their self-reported prediction of whether they are going to be perpetrators of interpersonal violence in future. These are the three objectives for this particular study, and this was done among adolescents in certain colleges of South India. So that is the description of the study. I am going to show you how we described the results of this particular study through text, tables and figures so that it becomes clear with whatever we have been discussing so far. It is not necessary that you put this table, but it gives us a clear understanding of what objective is related to which part of the results. The first thing was to describe the study population. For any study, you have to first describe the study population. So that is the first thing. And for that, in this particular paper, we have no tables or figures. We described it in text under the subheading socio-demographic characteristics. Normally, in most manuscripts, you will find a description of the study population in table 1. It is usually called the table 1, where you describe the age, gender, religion, educational attainment, income, etc. But in this particular study, we chose not to go that route. It is okay, it is fine. So it is up to you what you decide to present in tables and figures. The first objective, as I said in the previous slide, was to examine the knowledge of these adolescents on interpersonal violence. So this information is presented in table 1, table 2, figure 1, and the text for this particular objective is mentioned under the subheading knowledge about IPV. The second objective was attitudes and perceptions. So this is not presented in the table, but it is given as a figure in figure 2, and the text associated with this particular objective is given under the subheading attitudes and perceptions on IPV. And the third objective was factors associated with seeing oneself as a perpetrator of IPV in the future. This information is given in table 3 and table 4. There are no associated figures, and the text for this particular objective comes under the subheading factors associated with foreseeing oneself as an IPV perpetrator. So this gives a clear pathway or a clear chart in my head as to what to expect in the results section, right? And these are the different tables and figure headings that we used. I will give a minute for you to read through this. Table 1 is titled Knowledge about IPV and Perception of Gender Roles Among Adolescents by Sex. Table 2 is the same thing, but instead of sex, it is by the stream of education. And table 3 is factors associated with self-perceived susceptibility to commit IPV in the future. Table 4 is a multivariable analysis of table 3. Table 3 was basically the bivariate analysis, and table 4 is where we built the logistic regression model. Therefore, it is the bivariable analysis. In figure 1, we talk about the perceived risk factors for IPV. So these are the risk factors that the adolescents mentioned are risk factors for IPV. And figure 2, we are going to describe the perceptions regarding the amount of allowable violence in an intimate relationship. So these figures and tables were prepared before we started writing the results section. So that gives us a clear way or clear pathway to start writing our results. For this particular study, the subheadings that were used in the results section were socio-demographic characteristics, knowledge about IPV, attitudes and perceptions on IPV, and finally factors associated with foreseeing oneself as an IPV perpetrator. I will give you certain snippets of the text that we have written under different subheadings of the results section. So here you can see the first subheading was socio-demographic characteristics. As you can see here, we have given a basic description of the study population, the total sample size, the age distribution, the gender distribution, and the different streams of education. And you can see in the red circle, I have put data not shown, which means this particular data which has been described under this heading has not been shown as a figure or a table. So that tells the reader that you need not go through the tables and figures to find this information, which is also acceptable and okay. If there is too much of information, you might want to resort to this kind of presentation, or you might simply shift that table to the supplementary appendix or web appendix, where you put all the remaining results which are not the main focus of the article. Under the second heading, you see knowledge about IPV. So I have highlighted the most important line which refers to the objective itself. We are going to say that about 35% of the adolescents were aware of IPV among women in the global scenario, and 40% were aware of the burden of IPV in India. And as you can see within the red circle, this is referred to in the table 1. So if the reader goes to table 1, much more information than what is given in the text is available for him or her to see through. And then there is referring to the figure 1, which says what are the different. In the second paragraph of the second subheading, we can see that about 83% perceived that an alcoholic spouse was responsible for IPV. So this gives us an understanding of what the adolescents are thinking of, and for the remaining risk factors that the adolescents mentioned, you have to refer to figure 1. So you can see here the main point or the main message of a particular table or figure is mentioned as the text, and we are referring the reader to that particular table or figure for further information. The third subheading talks about the attitudes and perceptions. Here we are talking about what the different attitudes and perceptions of the adolescents were, and we are referring the reader to table 1 and figure 2 for further information. Fourth and final subheading, that is factors associated with foreseeing oneself as an IPV perpetrator. You can see we are referring the reader to two particular tables, that is table 3 and table 4, and the most important finding of those particular tables are mentioned in the text. I am reading out here. 2 factors, that is being a student of a professional course and believing in societal gender roles, were significantly associated with foreseeing oneself as a future perpetrator of IPV. Within the blue circle, you can see we have mentioned the numerical result of the table, that is prevalence ratio is equal to this much and the 95% CI is equal to this much. So this is a standard way of reporting an odds ratio, relative risk or prevalence ratio along with the confidence interval. Different journals might require different types of reporting, but commonly this is the format which is preferred. So far, we have been talking about the general principles of writing the results section of a manuscript. Now, let us see some important do's and don'ts while writing the results section. These are some of the important do's that you should follow while writing the results section. Recycle the methods outline. This means you must have followed a certain sequence or a certain line of thought when you were writing the method section, right? If possible, you can reproduce or recycle the same outline in the result section so that the reader connects a particular result or finding with a particular methods that was used to achieve that finding or result. Walk the reader through salient findings. You might have found so many things in your study. That doesn't mean that you have to put every little detail into your result. So walk the reader through the most important findings which you want the reader to focus on, and refer to the table or figure or the supplementary appendix for further details. Provide numerators and denominators while writing the sentence of your result. So for example, you could say, of the so many subjects which were examined, these many subjects had a particular condition. So you can give the numerator as well as the denominator and the percentage or the mean, whatever has been found out, within brackets, or you can also write it outside the brackets. So this is an example of how you would connect your statement with the data which is given in the table or figure. Caption the information in tables or figures. So if there is a main finding in a particular table or figure, you can caption it, and at the end of it you can put table 1, table 2 or figure 1 or figure 2. So this is the most important message or the most important finding or the most important purpose of that particular table or figure. Here an example is shown to say that cases and controls did not differ with respect to baseline characteristics. This might be the most important message of a particular table in a case control study. So you have to caption it like that. It immediately puts the reader at ease and the reader finds what he is expecting to find. Describe the information in simple terms. So there is always a challenge by investigators or researchers to convey the complex information that we find in science in simple terms for the reader to understand quickly and easily. So a delicate balance has to be struck between using scientific language at the same time using simple English or simple terms so that the message is not lost in the language itself. Backup statements with data in the sentence, tables, or simply say data not shown. So as I showed in one of the examples, we had described the baseline characteristics in text, but we have not given any table. In that case, you can say within brackets data not shown. Otherwise, you have to refer to a figure or a table when you are describing data in the text in the results section. Use the past tense to report results. When you write your results section, the study has already been completed, so the results belong to the past. But the paper will be read in the future, therefore the present has no meaning. Therefore make sure to use the past tense to write the results section of your manuscript. These are some of the don'ts that you should follow when writing the results section of your manuscript. Do not use generic sentences. Make sure that the sentences that you write for your particular manuscript are within the context of your study. Do not re-explain the methods. That is, don't try to re-emphasize the criteria that you used in your study or the case definitions that you have used in your study. Keep it simple. Do not discuss or interpret the results. So this is an important point which we always forget. That is, do not provide reasons or interpret your findings. Do not provide any adjectives or qualifiers to your findings. This has to be done only in the discussion section. So in the results section, we only describe what we observe, we do not qualify them. Do not quote references. That is, all the findings in your study are only from your study. There is no outside reference for the findings that you have got in your study. Therefore, do not provide or do not cite any references. Do not spell out every result in the table. You might have created 3 or 4 tables and 3 or 4 figures. It is not necessary that you write down every piece of information that you have given in the table or figure. Write down only the salient findings of your study in text and refer to the table or figure for additional information. So the reader should not be lost within the wealth of information that you are providing in the results section, but there should be 1, 2, 3, 4 clear messages that the reader can take home. Do not use adjectives and qualifiers. As I said, do not say things which qualify your result. For example, as expected, unexpectedly, unsurprisingly, surprisingly, fortunately, very high, very low. These are terms which are reserved for the discussion section where you are trying to interpret and find meanings for the results that you have obtained in your study. Do not use etc. Since we are writing a scientific manuscript, we do not want to sound that we are unsure of our results. We have to be very specific, and therefore the use of the word etc. is not good. Do not report results in statistical language. What does this mean? So I have given an example here. In the simple regression analysis, education and pregnancy status give highly significant relationship, while language and counseled by give a significant relationship. Clinic and complaints show no significance on screening. So this is an example of how we would exactly describe the statistical method that we have used and the results obtained. Instead of using such language, if we directly say what we found in simple English terms, it would be much more attractive to the reader. For example, women who were educated, who spoke Hindi, and who benefited of a counseling from a physician were more likely to consent to the screening test. Now, how we found this result will already be described in the method section. So do not worry about trying to say what analysis you used. You can simply state the findings of your analysis in simple English sentences. Since we are writing a scientific manuscript, we have to use statistical terms in their original sense. So proper use of statistical terms in the results section is highly recommended. These are some of the terms which are commonly used in a statistical sense, but they could also be used in a simple English meaning. Make sure that when you are using these terms, you refer to the statistical meaning alone and not the common English meaning. So the word significant means not caused by chance in a statistical sense. That is, you found that the p-value was less than 0.05. Do not use this word in any other context while writing the results section. Correlation is another such word which has a specific meaning which denotes the strength of linear relationship between two quantitative variables. Do not use the word correlation in any other loose sense. Similarly, the word random means that each element in our sample has an equal chance of occurring, and the word sample itself will refer to a sample that you have taken from a population by any means of sampling method. So do not use the word sample to refer to laboratory specimens or tissue samples or cytology specimens. So when you use the word sample in any other context, try to provide some qualifier so that it doesn't get confused with the statistical sample. I would like to leave you with these take-home messages. Maintain the sequence as you prepared in the argument matrix. So when you're writing the result section, try to maintain the same sequence as you would have used in the introduction and method section. Keep text to a minimal and highlight the major positive and negative findings. All tables and figures and supplementary information should be quoted in the main text. Do not leave anything unreferenced. Do not discuss or reason in the results. That is, make sure that you only provide what you observe in the result section. Do not provide any meaning or interpretation or justification for the results that you have observed. This has to be done in the discussion section. If you have a lot of results in the form of lengthy tables and figures, you can prepare a supplementary document containing all these extra tables and figures, and you can upload them separately without giving them in the main text. That's all I have for you. I wish you all the best in your manuscript submissions, and thank you.